Mystery exploration. Darkness. History. Darkest side.
Terence McKenna, the man who revealed reality. There are some people whose words echo long after they're gone, voices that seem to come from another world, whispering truth society isn't ready to hear. One of those voices belonged to Terence McKenna. Terence wasn't your ordinary thinker. He didn't stand behind pulpits or wave flags at rallies. He didn't wear the robes of a priest, the suit of a politician, or the lab coat of a scientist. Instead, he was something far rarer, a wanderer of the mind, a traveler in landscapes invisible to most of us. His soft, hypnotic voice didn't shout or demand, yet it shook the very foundations of reality. To him, the world we see is not the world as it really is. It is only a thin veil, a painted backdrop stretched across something far deeper and stranger. Terence told us that language, culture, even time itself, are stories. Stories we've agreed to believe in. But if you ever dared to step outside those stories, even for a fleeting moment, you'd find yourself staring into an entirely different universe. And Terence knew about stepping outside. He had done it himself, through journeys into consciousness, through ancient myths, and yes, through encounters with plants that indigenous cultures had used for thousands of years. While most people's lives ran on predictable tracks, school, job, family, retirement, McKenna was asking questions so big that they rattled the very idea of what it meant to be human. He became known for his lectures, talks that spread across college campuses, radio waves, and later television. But audiences expecting light chatter or philosophical puzzles quickly realized this was something different. Imagine tuning in, expecting a discussion about society, only to hear a calm, almost otherworldly voice saying, "Reality is not what you think. Culture is not your friend. Time is a mystery." For many, it was unsettling. For others, electrifying. He explained that consciousness, this flickering flame of awareness inside us, was the most mysterious force in the universe. And modern society, he warned, was designed to keep us distracted from it. He had a metaphor he loved: life, he said, is like a movie we've been thrown into without a script. Most of us sit quietly in our seats, letting the story unfold. But every now and then, someone dares to stand up, walk off the stage, tear down the curtains, and peek at what's really behind it all. That, Terence believed, was the true calling of human beings. Not to consume endlessly, not to follow rules blindly, but to explore, to stretch the boundaries of mind and reality. At a time when the late 20th century was obsessed with machines, technology, and endless progress, McKenna stood apart. He reminded people of something older, something primal. He spoke about what he called the archaic revival, the return to ancient wisdom, forgotten rituals, and even sacred plants that had once guided humanity. To him, these weren't just old traditions to study in textbooks. They were keys that could unlock dimensions of understanding that modern society had shut away. And it wasn't just talk. Terence himself traveled deep into the Amazon rainforest, living with indigenous people, seeking what he called the felt presence of direct experience. He wasn't satisfied with second-hand answers. He wanted to know for himself, and then share it with the world. When he spoke of these journeys, his listeners leaned in closer. His words weren't the ramblings of a man lost in fantasy. They carried a strange weight, as if he had glimpsed something both terrifying and magnificent, and returned only barely able to describe it. But perhaps the most haunting part of McKenna's message was his view of time. He didn't see history as a random sequence of events. He believed it was a process, like a great spiral tightening as it moved toward a singularity. A point where everything would change. He even proposed that human history itself was building toward a moment of transformation, a convergence where the boundaries of reality, technology, and consciousness would collapse into something entirely new. Many dismissed this as wild speculation. Yet others couldn't shake the sense that he was touching on something real, that beneath the surface of wars, elections, and markets, something much deeper was unfolding. As the years passed, McKenna's message grew darker. He warned that society was drifting further and further from meaning. That we were drowning in consumerism, seduced by technology, and lulled into sleep by endless distractions. He urged people to wake up, to search for deeper truths before it was too late. Listening to him, you couldn't help but feel he was sounding an alarm, calling us away from the edge of something dangerous. And then, almost suddenly, his voice was silenced. In the year 2000, at just 53 years old, Terence McKenna was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive brain tumor. Within a few months, he was gone. His death shocked many. Some whispered conspiracies, that perhaps he had revealed too much, touched something humanity wasn't meant to see. Others believed he had simply completed his journey, stepping fully beyond the illusion he had spent his life describing. Either way, the timing felt uncanny. Here was a man who had spent decades warning of the fragility of existence, urging us to question the very nature of reality, and then, like a candle blown out, he was gone. But McKenna's voice did not vanish. His lectures, recorded on cassette tapes, then CDs, and now endlessly shared online, continue to circulate. Even now, decades after his passing, seekers put on headphones late at night and hear him whispering from the past, "The world is not as it seems. Reality is stranger than you can imagine." And in today's world, a world drowning in screens, headlines, and noise, his words feel more urgent than ever. Terence once said, "The real world is not only stranger than we suppose, it's stranger than we can suppose." That line alone captures why he continues to fascinate us. Deep down, many of us sense that he was right. That reality is fragile, slippery, and not as solid as we've been taught. That truth is not handed to us, it must be discovered. And maybe that's why his words linger. Because they invite us, not just to listen, but to question. To look beyond the surface of things. To wonder whether life itself is a riddle we have barely begun to solve. So tonight, as you hear this story, ask yourself, what is reality? Is it the news on our screens, the rules written in our laws, the ticking clocks and numbered calendars that measure our days? Or is it something else, something vast, elusive, waiting just outside the corner of your vision? Terence McKenna may no longer be here to guide us, but his life, his ideas, and even his death remind us of something profoundly human. The search for truth is not optional. It is the journey we were born to take. And maybe, just maybe, if we listen closely, his voice will remind us that behind the curtain of ordinary life, there is a mystery calling us to explore.